All right. My guest is here, Anna Guh. I'm going to nail it right the first time. I've been
Yeah.
butchering people's names all week, so I'm going to get yours right. Anna, she is a host and reporter for CGTN Radio. Anna, welcome to the show. How you doing today? You doing all right?
Thank you very much for the invitation. And how's your trip to Malaysia?
So far, so good. This is a brutal schedule, a
Wow.
very brutal schedule, but it's okay. I
Yeah.
chose it.
Or-
I can't complain to my audience about it. But so far, I love it. I was here, I think it was last year on vacation. In fact, speaking
yeah.
about it, the last time I was here to Malaysia was when I found out that they were going to fire me. And that fire is not the right word for it. That they were shutting the network down. I was sitting in the airport, and Tony Blinken came on because airports they play CNN constantly, and it was Blinken comes out and says something like, "Yeah, we're passing sanctions on RT and Sputnik and the parent companies." And
Mhm.
so that's what we're doing. We're going to shut these networks down. And I was like, whoa, what the hell does that mean? Well, we found out what that means. So yeah, but
Yeah.
no, I love it here. The people are nice. People are cool as can be. So far, so good. So thank
I
you for
really hope
joining me.
you can visit Beijing, sometimes.
I
Maybe
would
even
love
host a talk show here in China.
I would love to come to Beijing. I mean, I was, I don't remember the name of the place when I was took the flight here, but I was there for like 12 hours. I ended up booking a hotel just to sleep because I had been traveling for like 30, 40 hours at that point. But no, I would love to get the opportunity to come back where I can
Mhm.
stay for a period of time and visit for a bit, like just tour, or at the very
Yeah.
least be there, like soak into the country for a bit.
Yeah. Maybe you
I
can
brought
talk
you
to Chinese
on.
people next. Sorry. Yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
no, no, please continue. Finish your
Yeah,
thought.
I'm just saying maybe next time you can talk to the Chinese people on the streets. I think, um, Chinese people love discussing international politics. So
Do they?
even yeah, taxi drivers, for example, they are very vocal. And I think these conversations you'd have might be, even more insightful than you expected.
Well,
So
I am one of those people who love talking to taxi drivers. You'd be surprised of some of the things you could talk about with, and the things that they would just openly opine as you're talking to them. So no, especially if they speak the language, I would love to have those conversations. Anna, I am super curious. I'm not going to spend too much time on this part, just because I've spoken about it over the course of the week. Hexef comments. I am super curious how that went down in Beijing. Like
mhm.
from my point of view, that is effectively a declaration of war. Hegseth effectively pointed out a Chinese attack on Taiwan is imminent. He had one of the most mendacious speeches that was just jaw-droppingly dishonest. We're not trying, we respect China. We're not trying to surround it. Okay, so that's kind of weird since you're putting military in Taiwan, military in Philippines, military in Japan, etc. That's super weird that you're not trying to surround it. We're not trying to provoke an instigated conflict. Okay, since you're salami slicing the one China policy, that's also kind of weird. Like, meaning he lied so like severely throughout that speech. It was just delusional and deranged. What was the talk in Beijing over this? I can't imagine that was going to go down all that well. He effectively pointed out that the U.S. was willing to militarily defend Taiwan, which is again Chinese territory. It would be like if the U.S. said, or if China said, we will militarily defend Hawaii from the U.S. It
Mhm.
doesn't entirely make sense, and yet that's where we
Yeah.
are.
I think that's a very good analog, the Hawaii one. I want to separate this topic, your questions, into two parts. One is China's response to his speech, and the
Mhm.
other one is on the Taiwan question. The Shangri-La, I want to emphasize one thing is that the Shangri-La dialogue, it was never meant to be a battlefield. It's supposed to be a
Right,
platform for dialogue, right?
right.
People, where countries can come together and talk things through and hopefully ease tensions, not escalate them. But lately, we've seen, as you said, some actors turn it into a stage of political posturing, and they use sharp words and push confrontational narratives, and essentially treat the forum like a showdown. And that completely misses the point of why we have this dialogue, right? And let's be honest, global tensions today are very already high. And the last thing we need is another platform being used to widen these divisions. What we need is more open, honest communication. That's the only way to rebuild trust and prevent misjudgments today. And take South China Sea or trade issues, none of these are going to be solved by one-sided lectures or threats. China hasn't been clear, it's open to dialogue, but it won't be pressured, and that's a firm but a fair position. And as reflected to what Hackfest said during the meeting, frankly, what he said barely caused a ripple in China because there were official responses to clarify China's position, that's for sure. But to be honest, many people here, myself included, had the same reaction like, okay, here we go again. You know, the talking points were tired, predictable, and lacked any fresh thinking. And at times, it feel like we were reading old headlines again. I think to some extent, Beijing's calm and measured response, and that reflects just how well he anticipated that this kind of um, posturing or this kind of a result from US politicians. It wasn't surprised. It certainly was not provoked. As we know, since taking office, Hagdas has spent most of his energy on domestic issues, including attacking diversity and inclusion policies in the U.S. military and going after media. And now, during his Asia visit, he's trying to pitch the idea that the United States, not China, is the region's most trustworthy partner. But that message is hard to sell in worldwide right now, right? Because Trump administration has undermined trust with even its closest allies, launching tariff war, questioning even the European Union's internal matters, and showing a clear willingness to abandon multilateralism. I think if Washington can't even build stable economic ties with its allies, how can he expect it to be trusted on security? That's a question to many its allies, even Japan or Australia, are asking. Because in reality, it's the U.S. that acts as a true hegemonic power globally and arguably the biggest source of instability in the Asia Pacific. Under the banner of its so-called Indo-Pacific strategy, Washington has been deploying offensive weapons in the South China Sea and stoking tensions and creating frictions across the region. These moves are turning this region, Asia Pacific, into a potential flashpoint, which I think has uh, many regional countries deeply concerned about this situation, especially in this region. I think most Asian countries generally want peace and development, not confrontation. Even U.S. allies like Australia have shown, growing resistance to pressures from Trump administration. So when Washington tried to, push Canberra on its defense budget, Australia pushed back, saying clearly that we decide our own defense budget and we don't accept interference. That really tells us something. There's a growing desire across the region for autonomy, for choosing what's in their own best interest rather than being forced into someone else's agenda. Um, and to the Taiwan question, I because I know I want to make clear is that I know there are a lot of people trying to, use Ukraine as an example to to tell the Taiwan story. First, I want to say the historical and the legal contexts are completely different. Taiwan has never been recognized as a sovereign state by the United Nations. Even the United States, despite its, you know, um, rhetorics recently, they still adheres to the one China policy and it does not recognize Taiwan as an independent country. In contrast, Ukraine is a fully sovereign UN recognized state. So equating the two sides, two region is factually flawed. And secondly, the Taiwan question is an internal matter. It's about national reunification for China, not external invasion. Framing it as a geopolitical standoff like Ukraine, Russia, that oversimplifies the situation and distorted the reality of the cross-strait relations. And thirdly, I want to say is using the Ukraine. This actually serves a political agenda for the United States. That is to justify a greater military intervention and content strategy in Asia, but it also risks inflaming tensions unnecessarily. And let's not forget there's been decades of real cross-strait interactions, business ties, cultural exchanges, even family connections that continue to shape how the two sides related to each other. So building on that, according to U.S. military outlets, Stars and Stripes, the retired Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery, right? Recently, he told Congress that around 500 American military personnel are currently operating in China's Taiwan region. That's more than 10 times the number previously disclosed by the US Congress. And at the same time, two US officials revealed that President Trump is planning a major increase in arms sales to Taiwan, aiming to, surpass the 18.3 billion US dollar total from his first term. Um, and also this rhetoric from the Hagdas and any arms sales or military statement about Taiwan isn't just symbolic, because for China and from Chinese perspective, it's a red line. Taiwan is not Ukraine, but today, as we talked about this, you can see the strategy looks quite similar. That is, increasing involvement and creating facts on the ground, and then blaming the other side for reacting, because China has said, um, uh, China, we reaffirmed our position for peaceful reunification under the one China two systems. What it firmly opposes is external interference and military coercion. So to label such a stance as a declaration of war is not only misleading, but it also reveals a deeper anxiety and bias in some Western narratives. This
Yeah.
isn't a reflection of China's strategic intent, is a projection of others, fear, not facts.
I think the reason, and I do this too, right? I use Ukraine as an example because and I understand your point. Your point is right. That Taiwan is, by framing it in the lens of Ukraine, it makes it look as if Taiwan is an independent actor, that it's separate and distinct from China when it really is not. And so I do get it. The reason it's done, and I think including the reason that you just alluded to it, meaning you even used it as somewhat of an example, is because it's this continuously poking and poking and poking and poking. It's
Mhm.
this idea of we're going to provoke something, and we're going to provoke something in a space that you can't ignore it. So, like if you and I are playing chess, and I attack something, and I know she has to defend that. She can't get away from defend. Like you have to, even if you lose the game, you got to defend that spot. It's that. For Russia, it was Ukraine. Ukraine was the area
Mhm.
where the West has invaded like two or three times. Three times. What, Napoleon, First World War, Second World War. Like it was that angle to which they could go after Russia. For China, it's Taiwan. If I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken, they used Taiwan as a platform to go after China once before. And so it's like, okay, you're going after the thing that we can't ignore. And so I agree with you. Fair enough. Taiwan is part of China, either by the way we see it from the standpoint of the communiques, the three communiques, or by the rest of the world sees it. But from this angle of China is not going to allow the West to rip it away like it did Hong Kong. That's off the table. And because it's not going to allow it to be ripped away, then a moment is going to come where either China gets involved or China has to let it go.
Mhm.
And it seems like that's the idea. That seems to be the plan. We keep pushing and pushing and pushing. We keep salami slicing the one China policy. We're going to put more troops on. Oh, they let us put 500 down. We're going to put 5,000. We're giving them X amount of weapons. We're going to triple that. Maybe we're going to add 5 times more weapons. And at some point, China is either going to have to say, all right, that's enough, or take their hands off of it. That seems to be the plan. Give me your take on that. I'm super curious on takes on this because I
Mhm.
get China plays Go, and it's like we want to build cooperative relationships. We don't play Go here. We play chess. Zero sum.
Yeah, indeed. Um, you know, we have been advocating for a peaceful resolution to the
Yes.
Taiwan question. But if the U.S. continues to send the wrong signals to, Taiwan independence forces, the mainland will be, forced to take all necessary measures in accordance with the law to, safeguard its sovereignty and territorial integrity. That means Beijing doesn't want a war, but it also won't stand by while others attempt to, redraw the red lines under any form. Having said that, I want to take this opportunity to talk about a wildest discussion from the United States, that is, Chinese mainland will take over Taiwan by force in 2027, right? Um, I couldn't find any Chinese documents or reports on this. I think the origin of all those is from a personal speculation from a US general, but somehow, like many disinformation on China, got amplified by the so-called Western mainstream medias. When it comes to make a decision of peace of war, if you ask anyone in the mainland, be it government officials or high school students, the first choice is always peace. The long-term stance from Beijing is that China is committed to reunification because it's in its best interest of the people living on both sides of the streets. And he firmly believes that the mainland and Taiwan are bound to be reunified. But China also does not make a commitment to completely renounce the use of force. And the potential use of force is to deter Taiwan independent force and is not targeted at the Taiwan people. It can be said, um, to a certain extent, that without the pursuit of Taiwan independence, the need for force would diminish. It's that simple. But what's becoming clear is that a stable, peaceful Taiwan doesn't serve the interests of those, pushing for independence and the external forces behind them. The continuous hype around China aggression, which refers to China's military drills in response to those provocations, like, for example, Pelosi's visit and U.S. military maneuvers, those only intensify the risks of conflict, those provocations. We have to see who is still pushing the button after, China has been constantly said, I prefer peaceful reunification and but keen all options on the table. Is those who have been provoking China and the already tense situation and wish to cash in on the turbulent Taiwan streets are the ones to blame. And I think your audience would like to know this. If you look at recent surveys in Taiwan, the public are clearly pessimistic about the Taiwan streets conflict because data shows that less and less people in Taiwan say they would resist if a war broke out, and only 4.9% explicitly say they would join the military, just the 4.9%. The point is, people in Taiwan do not want a conflict because it will fall on their land, on their body. And in current times, despite the tensions portrayed by the Western media, the exchanges across Taiwan, across the Taiwan streets, are extremely extensive. For instance, among the top 10 most popular pop singers in the mainland, probably half are from Taiwan. And some TV series and movies are shared by both sides. And there are a lot of discussions on Chinese media platform Xiaohongshu from both sides. The young people, they bond with each other based on those people to people exchanges and cultural exchanges. And in 2023, the cross-strait trade volume reached 270 billion US dollars, with Taiwan having a trade surplus of 81 billion US dollars. And just not long ago, the ping pong superstar Malone, together with a group of university students, visited the island and attracted massive media attention. So to us, from both sides of the streets, why would we jeopardize everything we have now? Why we want to kill each other? My feeling is that the so-called escalation or intense situation is not something initiated by the two peoples across the streets, but is more like a specifically made tool to attack China or to meet personal political goals. Because we all know that if a war broke out, there will be no development for both sides, for China, for Taiwan, for the mainland, for Taiwan. And who will benefit from a weakened China? Definitely not Chinese people on both sides.
It is not. Look, this stuff has, in the Second World War, there was this thing called a blank check. And the thought
Yeah.
was, no, the First World War, blank check. And the thought was that part of the reason Austria-Hungary was so willing to go into the lion's teeth was because Germany was effectively saying, hey, we'll back you. And it's the same thing with this, right? Whether it's Ukrainian nationalists, these Banderites, getting the blank check from the US, hey, we'll back you for as long as it takes. It's that. Otherwise, these groups wouldn't behave this way. They'd be more, they'd be less inclined to go to war. They'd be less inclined to have this provocative response. And look, from the US standpoint, from our standpoint, it's a win-win. If it, I, I don't know why anyone in Taiwan would look at Ukraine and say that's a good idea. I just don't. And yet, you have some in Taiwan that apparently do. And so, no, it's not for the benefit of Taiwan. It's not for the benefit of China. It's not for anything like that. It's purely for the benefit of the US. I agree with you entirely. One last thing. We have about 4 minutes. Is that right? 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 4 minutes. Okay, we have about 4 minutes. Got to get to the trade issue because it seems that this is being reignited. So Donald Trump, 2 a.m. tweet again, China is, reneged on its promise. Okay, for one, it didn't renege on its promise. The U.S. decided to pass these weird sanctions, this worldwide sanction, which is pretty astonishing when you think about it. A nation of 5% dictating what the other 95% of the world could do. But whatever. Decided to pass this on Huawei's chips. I believe it was the AI chips. China came back and said, well, no, the U.S. is breaching the agreements. And so this seems to be back at loggerheads in a reignited trade war. The U.S. has increased tariffs on steel and aluminum 50%. That's not, I don't even think that's hitting China majorly. That's hitting more so Mexico and Canada since they are our major steel suppliers. But also, from China's point of view, you're preventing Chinese students from coming back to the U.S., or at the very least, you're trying to make it hard for them. You're kicking many of them out, and you're preventing people from China from coming to the U.S. There's that. And there was something else. There was one other thing that we decided to do that effectively violated, from the Chinese point of view, the trade deal or any kind of talks that were taking place. So Trump, again, Truth Social, this is the way diplomacy is made in the 21st century, at least by the U.S., comes out and says Xi Jinping is a hard negotiator. And it's like, it's not that he's a tough negotiator. Maybe he is, maybe he's not. But you are doing stupid stuff. I mean, 145% tariffs is comical. It's like comically ridiculous. And there is a bill in Congress right now that Trump is telling people to vote their conscience, and I think he told them to pull it just for the short term, that is saying we're going to pass sanctions on Russia to the tune of 500% to people who are trading with Russia. So China and India getting hit with 500% sanctions for using Russian energy, something that is a sovereign right of their countries to decide. Give me your take on this. We have about 3 minutes.
Okay.
Has this trade war reignited?
In China, we have a phrase for that called 敲竹杠, which roughly translates to extorting by knocking the bamboo pole. It refers to a tactic, where someone pressures you on the one hand and offers negotiation on the other. I think that's exactly what we're seeing from Washington, especially under
Yeah.
Trump's signature negotiation style. I think for sure, if we look at the facts, it reveals how Washington is again violating the spirit of the talks, and this time it's the Geneva talks. Plus, Trump is negotiating with many countries at once. And since these earlier talks didn't bring him enough domestic and political gains, he's turning up to the pressure on China again. But if there's one thing China has learned over the years, when negotiating with Trump administration is that it is importance of to listen to what don't just listen to what he said. It's just more importantly watch what they do. So Beijing entered talks well aware and prepared that Washington might reverse course at any time. That's why China has stood firm still at this time. And I want to mention one thing is at the South China Morning Post noted China still controls the bulk of the global supply of critical minerals. China
Mhm.
rare earths alone account for over 90% of global production. That's not just the industrial dominance, it's a strategic resilience that China prepared long time ago, when dealing with trade frictions with the United States.
Mhm. Wow. Anna, thank you for this great breakdown, especially of the Taiwan issue. I really hope people get the gravity of that issue and how this is, what do you call it, gilding the lily? Maybe I'm using the wrong phraseology, but effectively it's a provocation that I don't know if we fully grasp in the way that it may be received in China, but it's a provocation nonetheless. Anna Guh, she is Yes, she is a host and reporter for CGTN Radio, political commentator, regular contributor on China mainstream media in South Africa, Sweden, India, and Central Asian countries. Anna, thank you for this. I really appreciate it. You be safe, okay? Have a good night.
Have a good night. Thanks for the opportunity. Bye.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye bye. All right.